Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Thank you for coming back again. Thank you also to everyone that has been watching my tutorials that I've been putting online recently. The feedback's been amazing. I'm just so pleased that you're enjoying painting watercolours as much as I do. Now, one thing I do have a lot of people ask me is, what do I need to get started? I often have a lot of people come up to me when I do shows and they'll say to me, I don't know where to start, I have no idea what materials to buy. So I thought I'd do a really quick video for you all, just explaining what materials I use when I'm doing my watercolour paintings. Explain a little bit about my reasons why I prefer one over the other, and just talk you through brushes, palettes, paints, etc. Just so that if you'd like to have a go at painting, or maybe you've been painting for a little while but you want to have a go at learning some of the techniques I use, you can have a look at this video, see what materials I use when I'm creating the artwork, and hopefully it'll help you out when it comes to you doing the step-by-step tutorials. So I hope you enjoy this video. Hopefully you'll find it useful. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow my channel as well. It really helps to then get it out to other people, so they can also enjoy my artwork and how I share my techniques with everybody. But thank you to everyone so far that has been supporting me. I really do appreciate it. So here we go. Enjoy. Okay, welcome back. You got a sneaky peek at my studio now as well, which is quite exciting. I'll have to do a special tour at some point as well and take you around the studio and explain how I use everything. So I was going to go through the different materials that I use when I do the watercolours. So I'm just going to move the camera down so you can have a look at everything that's on my desk currently, and then I'll explain it to you. So here you go. And you're on the desk. There we are. So first of all, don't panic. A lot of people are going to look at all this and go, oh my God, I haven't got all of this to actually do the painting with. Don't worry, you don't need all of this. What I've done is I've laid out a variety of different things for you to have a look at. And then if you've got some of this at home, you can use it. But if you've never done any watercolours before, hopefully this will be helpful into having an idea as to what to choose to buy. So first things first, really straightforward, you're going to need a pencil. So when it comes to doing your outline of your watercolours, you're always sometimes you'll go straight on in there with the paint, but often you will use a pencil to do your sketch and your outlining first. So any kind of pencil will do. Just a normal HB pencil even is absolutely fine. You can use your rubber, obviously you'll need one of those to just change things if you need to change designs and that around. I also use a putty rubber. Now for those of you that have never heard of a putty rubber before, let me know in the comments if you'd like me to do a little video and I can explain to you how this works. But it's quite handy and you'll maybe see me use it a few times in some of the videos as well. So I can go into more detail and explain how to use that. But yeah, just your pencil and rubbers to begin with. And then you'll need some watercolour paper. Now, there are lots of different types of brands and types of watercolour paper out there, so it can be a bit of a minefield. I would say when you're starting out, just go for whatever you can get your hands on. All right, now there are different grades of watercolour paper. Some, in my opinion, I prefer over others, but a lot of the time, with a lot of things in art, it's just down to personal preference. So I would say when you're starting out, go to your art shop, go to anywhere that sells any kind of art supplies and just get yourself some basic, what they call cold press watercolour paper. Now again, I can explain to you the different types of papers and the differences between them in a different video, so let me know in the comments and I can always go through them. But what I've got here, just to show you to get started, this is a standard cold press watercolour paper. I usually buy quite large pads, so you can see here, ta-da! Now this is your A3 size. This is a company called Bockingford. Just to let you know, none of the stuff on here is actually sponsored in any way. I'm just sort of explaining the materials I use and the products that I personally like best, but that can be different for everybody. But Bockingford, I find, does what I want it to do when I'm doing the artwork. So I prefer to use the Bockingford paper, but you can use Daler Rowney, Winsor & Newton. There's lots and lots of different brands and that out there. But this is what they would call a cold press, the CP, not white paper. All right, so I get this size because then I can cut it down. So if I want it to be A4, I'll chop it in half. If I want it to be A5, I'll chop it in half again. And then you can end up with smaller pieces if you want them, but you've got the bonus of having bigger sheets as well if you want to really go for it and do a nice painting, a big painting. So that's your basic paper to begin with. So once you've got your paper and you've sketched your design out, you're then going to want to go for it with your watercolours. Now, some of the things you're going to need to decide on what kind of watercolours you want to use. And there's two types. You can get them in a tube, like so, and you can buy them individually, or you can buy them in a full set. And then you've got these here, which are like little, hold it up so you can see it in the camera. That one's been very well used. But these are what they call half pans. You can get full pans as well, which are just a bigger block of colour. And what the difference is these are basically your watercolour that's been put into a hard block. All right. Whereas these are actually softened, they're liquid, and they obviously need to be squeezed out of the tube in order for you to use them. Now, totally personal preference on this. Some people prefer the tube, some people prefer the half pans. Personally, I like using the half pans best. I just feel that they do what I want them to do. But sometimes if I'm running out of a colour and I've got some in a tube, then I'll use the tubes. The only difference is when this dries, because the lovely thing with watercolour is that it's not permanent. And so you could leave it an hour, 6 days, 6 months, and the minute you put water onto it, even though it's dry, it will reactivate that paint for you to use. So even if you squeeze some of this out onto your palette and you let it dry, when it dries out really hard, it basically kind of becomes a half pan anyway. And a lot of people, when they run out of their half pan paints, like I've done here with this white, you can see in the camera there, hopefully you can see that. I ran out of the white, so I basically just squeezed white out of a tube and refilled it, and it's dried and it's gone hard like the rest of them. And as soon as you put water on that, you've got your paint again. So most people, if someone buys you a set of watercolours, 9 times out of 10 you'll end up being given tubes. However, again, try them out if you can. If you've got the opportunity, try out both and see how you get on. And follow some of my videos and you'll see how I use the actual half pans anyway. So that's your paint, all right? So we've got your paper and your paint sorted out. Then you need to find something to mix your paints on. Now you can see the state of my palette here. This is the one that I use all the time. This was actually my dad's when he was a dental technician, and he used to use it to mix the ceramics in when he was making teeth for people, basically. But it's all been washed up, and I use it all the time now. It's fantastic. Now it's a ceramic one. Now I wanted to explain to you the difference. So often you'll be able to buy the plastic palettes, or the other thing that works really good, if you've bought a set of watercolours like this, when you open it up, you can use the inside of the lid as a palette too. And this is great. So this little set here is a travel set. So you've got your paint selection on this side. You've got your lid that opens that, as I said, you could use it as a little mixing palette whilst you're out and about. And the other cute little thing with this particular set is that you've got this little metal long tube. However, when you pull it apart, push it in the end, you've got a brush. How cute is that? So it's really handy when you're out and about. You don't have to have a full length brush with you, which obviously wouldn't fit into the set. So you can have that little set with you, and when you're out and about, have a go at painting, which is quite nice. So you've got a palette here. Now this is plastic, this one is plastic too. Now you can get plastic, you can get ceramic. Personally, I prefer the ceramic ones because I'll show you why. So I'm just going to get my brush wet. I'm just going to pick up some blue from my half pan. And I'm going to show you the difference of what happens when you start mixing colours. So when you start mixing colours on a ceramic surface like this, now you can also use a plate. It doesn't have to be all fancy and expensive from an art shop, just a side plate's fine. So as I start to put my paint onto the ceramic surface, can you see how it spreads out really nicely? Yeah, so you can see the colour, and then you can obviously mix that up with other colours to create whatever it is that you want to paint with. However, if I was to do the same thing on the plastic palette, can you see how the paint's like bobbling up? Now, the way around this is to just keep adding more and more and more paint to it. However, it's very difficult to then try and get a good surface of paint mixed because it bobbles up because of the plastic surface. So these are fine to start out with. However, if you can and you really start enjoying doing the watercolours, you will find life's a lot easier if you use a ceramic surface to mix your colours on. And you can see the difference between the two. Ta-da! So it just makes life a lot easier for you when you're mixing. But sometimes you know, again, these often come in art kits. Doesn't mean that they're not going to work. They still do the same job. It just means that if you're wanting to mix colours and see the colours easier on your palette before you put them onto your paper, your ceramic surface works much better for that. So that's your mixing palette. Then we've got brushes. So you will come across so many different brands and types of brushes. You can get real hair ones, which are often sable. You can get synthetic brushes as well, which are obviously a kind of plasticky based mimic of the sable brush, which I must admit, for a lot of them, they're very, very good now. So I use synthetic simply because different brushes are used for different things. So often sable brushes are used because they'll hold a lot of water, and that's brilliant when you're doing big washes of paint all over your paper. However, I often don't paint with big dark washes and things in the background. I'll sometimes put a washy background on there, but I won't kind of flood the paper, and I won't need massive brushes to do it because I do quite small intricate pieces. So I find that personally I prefer using synthetic brushes. I also find that they come to a lovely point better, particularly your smaller brushes. And you can see here, there's this one. You can see how teeny tiny it is. And I will use even smaller brushes than that when I'm doing my painting. I find the synthetic bristles will stay at a nice point much better than when you're using a when you're using a sable brush. But a lot of the time it's down to personal preference. Some people will say, oh, you can't do watercolours without using a sable brush. However you apply the paint is entirely up to you at the end of the day. You're the artist. And I personally prefer synthetic brushes over having to use real hair. I quite like the fact also that it hasn't really come from an animal. So I like the fact that the synthetic, and to be honest with you, they've developed these over so many years now. They're really, really good. And I also sometimes do acrylic painting too. And you can use these brushes for acrylics as well, which is quite handy. So you don't have to go out and buy another lot of materials if you want to have a go at using a different media or material. So the brushes I use are synthetic brushes. I've got some here that are Winsor & Newton. These are Cotman brushes. I've got some here that are System 3 Daler Rowney. Now these are an all-round synthetic brush that you can use for watercolours and acrylics. What brand you go with is entirely up to you. I do find that if you go for a kind of better make, sometimes the bristles will, now some of these brushes I have had for years and years, and as long as you look after them and you clean them properly, they will last you a lifetime, so you won't have to keep going out and buying more brushes. Sometimes you find with very, very cheap brushes that the bristles start falling out when you're painting. And if that's all you can afford at the time, just get them. Just get them and start painting with them. It's absolutely fine. I've had bristles falling out of brushes in the past. It doesn't stop you from being an artist. It just gets a bit annoying. So after a while, you may well think, oh, actually, I'm going to upgrade and I'm going to get myself a slightly better brush. And you will find that you'll notice the difference. The key thing, though, to watercolour brushes is you want the bristles to be nice and soft. If they're quite hard and rigid, when you paint with the watercolour, you'll have to constantly keep dipping your brush in the paint to reload it because it won't hold much paint. And you'll also sometimes find that you'll see brush marks in your painting as well when you're painting it. So with the softer brush, this often won't happen. So if you can get yourself some nice soft brushes, fantastic. And also, because watercolour paints are quite watery, they're quite lightweight in themselves, you don't need big heavy bristles to hold and support and keep the shape of the brush when you're painting with it like you would with oils and things. So get yourself some nice synthetic brushes. You can get these in sets or packs. This is usually the biggest I go to, so you can see it's not gigantic, just because of the style I paint with. Get yourself some really lovely thin ones though, because I use these all the time. So there are your brushes. Then you'll just need some water. You don't need to go out and spend a fortune on water containers. This is just a little jar that I've used up from a dessert that I've just washed up and used. Glass works brilliantly because you can also see how far you're dipping your brush into it if you don't want the brush to be too wet when you're painting. Some tissue so you can wash your brushes off and you can dry your brushes as you're painting. And then pretty much you're good to go. You can then have a go at sketching out and creating your watercolour artwork. Hopefully you found that useful. If I have forgotten anything or you want me to explain any of it in a bit more detail, please just let me know. I'll bring you back up so you're not just looking at my hands. Hi. So yeah, if there's anything in particular you'd like to learn, or if you want to ask any questions about some of the materials I've just sort of explained to you, please do. And then I can do another video and explain to you, because I just want to make things a lot more user-friendly and hopefully get more and more people into painting. I absolutely love creating artwork. I love being an artist. I feel very lucky, and it's really good for your mental health. So I'm trying to get more and more people into doing it too and enjoy it as much as I do. So and I love passing on what I have learned over the years. So yeah, please like and subscribe. Please make sure that you're hitting that notification button as well, so that when I'm putting new videos on, that you are able to tune in and have a little look and see what I'm doing. And don't forget to leave me some suggestions as well. I love hearing from you. I love seeing what you're creating at home too. But if you've ever got something that you would like me to do a tutorial on, just ask, and then I can put one together for you. So yeah, thank you all so much for joining me, and get painting. Take care.